and we're going to be talking a little bit about acupuncture, mental health, and general wellness. Renee, thank you for joining me.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much.
So I'm really excited to have you here because typically when we think mental health and mental health care, the initial thought is mental illness.
Yes.
But there's so much more to mental health than mental illness. And I guess the first place I would like to start on this journey we're about to go on is who you are and how you got into acupuncture.
Yeah. Thank you so much. You know, and it's interesting because I am an acupuncturist, a Chinese medicine practitioner. I am a health and wellness coach. And I focus on wellness because I think we live in a culture, and our Western medicine likes to focus on illness. And that's why when we talk about mental health, like you said, we think about mental illness first. And there's so many aspects, and I'm so excited to share a lot of what we do as an acupuncturist and Chinese medicine practitioners, because it's what changed my life. I was someone who suffered from depression and anxiety, and also gastrointestinal disorder. And I was looking for a way, I was looking for all of the things that could help me. So I went down different avenues, and it was acupuncture and Chinese medicine that helped me. And to learn about who I was in relationship with my body and how it treated me, it helped me build that connection between body and mind and spirit, because it's a very old medicine. It's a very human medicine that really takes into account the human condition. And I think when we're talking about our mental health, it really is actually living through being a human being, being in this world, and learning to negotiate those relationships with other people, relationships within ourselves, within our culture, within our environment. You know, it's very foggy outside of the day. How do we come out of the fog and into a clarity around our own beingness? And I think when we're talking about mental health, it's finding safety and comfort in our own being.
Absolutely. Oh, I love the way that you put that and the way you shared. For a lot of people, the illness part is what gets a lot of the news. It's what gets a lot of the media, as it should, just because supporting people with illnesses is something that's important. But humans also forget that our overall mental health affects all aspects of our health. Like, people think mental health is a separate thing we put off into a shelf. When we take care of our physical health, then we can look at our mental health. But I love the interesting way Chinese medicine and acupuncture brings the two together, because as humans, our brains are part of our physical body too. So you can't chuck your brain on a shelf and be like, oh, I'm taking care of my heart, my lungs, my knees, elbows and toes and all of that. Mm-hmm. And I'll chat with my brain later. So can we talk a little bit more about how in your practice you work with people to bridge the two together?
Yeah, a lot of it is, I mean, there's a word that we're hearing more and more about now, and I think we need to hear more about, which is a somatic practice. Okay. So what a somatic practice is actually being able to listen in and tune in to the language of our body. And this is what acupuncture and any traditional medicine does very, very well. Again, it is about listening with our ears, listening with all of our senses, being able to see, being able to smell. So there's a diagnostic process that we use in a 5-element Chinese medicine perspective, which is color, sound, odor, and emotion. So what is the color? So not someone's like skin color, you know, but like what hues are shining through, right? So if it's orange, it's more earth nature. If it's more gray, it's more metal nature. Blue, water nature. Green, wood nature. And red, fire nature. So that's a part of how we look. But that can show up in a very, I guess, in an interpersonal way, or in a personality way, or in a behavioral way, or like a contextual way, what people are interested in. So fire nature, these are joy or lack of joy people. Earth nature, people who like very like nurturing, but also worry a lot, overthink things, right? But also very inclusive in their way of being in the world. Metal nature, we're dealing with grief and the poignancy of the beautiful autumn days, you know, where the leaves turn golden and they fall away. Water nature, we're dealing with fear, but also a trust in the unknown, of allowing yourself to just trust, a lot of faith in that kind of water nature. And then wood nature, it's about the uprising, that movement up and that vision towards something greater, but it can also be anger and frustration. Anger can be a very useful emotion. So when we look at these emotions in Chinese medicine, we're not judging them in a good or bad kind of way. And I think, you know, in this culture, we do a lot of this judgment, and I think that injures us. And it injures us, those of us who suffer from mental health, I guess, disorders, which I don't really like, but people who struggle with how we relate in the world and with our chemistry, we feel like it's something we need to hide because it's something that's judged. But we don't judge it in Chinese medicine. We just watch it as a pattern, and we learn about its nature. And in learning about its nature, we learn how we want to affect it, right? So if there's too much water, if someone is like very manic, there's too much, pardon me, if there's too much fire, someone's very, very manic, then we want to cool down that fire, right? We try not to feed the fire with more wood. We try to kind of limit and allow it to kind of temper itself. And these are ways we pay attention and how we treat. So that's in the points that I choose. It's in the, as a health and wellness coach, the practices I give people to take home, the homework I give them, the types of foods I ask them to eat, the types of thoughts, and how, you know, they want to be in the world. So sometimes my prescription is, yeah, to go for a walk in the woods. There's lots of information now about grounding and being out in nature and nature schools, and that gives people an opportunity to cool down, calm down, and to be able to create a bigger sense of self in relationship with the world around them, so we're not caught in these rabbit holes that we can kind of go into.
I really like the way when you were talking about the different kinds of senses and colors of when people like the fire, the earth, the metal, and all of that. Because sometimes when we think about how we're feeling in ourselves, we've taken ourselves out of nature.
Yes.
We're existing, not connected to the earth, and not
Yes.
feeling as part of one with the world. So I really like the way you've described it. And then you talked about points. So I'm going to go into the acupuncture part for a minute. When people generally think acupuncture, people say, I can't do it, I have a fear of needles.
Yeah.
And so can we walk people through what to expect if you
Yeah.
decided one day, I'm looking to support my overall health, my mental wellness and my physical wellness, and I'm looking to see what acupuncture can do to support me in that. How do we coax them out of that fear initially?
Yeah, and just to say off the bat, like once upon a time in my naivete, I used to believe that acupuncture was for everyone. And now, like 15 years in practice, I don't think that that's true anymore. But I do think that if it is your medicine, it can be a very beautiful medicine. And I have people who come to me and they say, I'm desperate. And I don't like to treat desperation. You know, it's very difficult because people are grasping and they're in a lot of physical pain or emotional pain. So we take a breath, and it's always trying to give people an opportunity to sit with themselves, and then we just have a really real conversation. I include people in my process of looking and going through their intake form and figuring out what's wrong and what they need, how they want support. I learn about how they're already in touch with their body, if they already have a language of their body. That's really important. And then if they have a fear of needles, obviously that's a different conversation. I like to introduce people to the needles because these are the tools. This is the tools of my trade, the tools of the work that we do, and the tools, the instrument of change that we're going to be using to help people move through whatever it is. And we talk about what that feels like. So I have a couple rules when it comes to acupuncture. And the first rule is, if you don't feel me stick you with a needle, that's weird. You think you would feel something. Mm-hmm. And I don't always use the word stick or needle because depending on people's fear levels, that can already be triggering. So if you don't feel a point enter your body, that's strange. You think you would feel something, right? Sometimes you feel a mosquito bite you, or sometimes you feel you pinch yourself with a tack. It's not as sharp as it, or as intense as if you pinch yourself with a tack. But we do want the points to be sharp. You do want the needles to be sharp because you want less feeling. So the smoother, the sharper the points are, the less that you feel. The other rule and the consideration is once the point is inside, so below the dermis of the skin, and that is the regulatory part of acupuncture, to insert a needle below the dermis of the skin for the sake of acupuncture, for healing. Once it's in there, you don't really have a lot of feeling. Now you can say it's painful when it first approaches, like goes in, punctures your skin for sure, because you've just punctured the skin. But once it's settled, you can have a feeling, you can have a discomfort, you can have warm, people have itchy, people describe all kinds of things. It's really quite fun how different people experience it. But what we don't want is pain. And pain is anything that the body says, get this away from me, or the mind says, get this away from me, or the emotional self says, get this away from me. And then we readjust and we change it. So probably in all of my practice, I've had 2 people that I have said, I can't give you acupuncture, because they couldn't even rest with the conversation. So it's okay to call it, right? But as a Chinese medicine practitioner, that's not my only tool. So there's a lot of other things. We do cupping, we do gua sha, we do tuina massage, we do moxibustion, we do food therapy, right? Qigong, Tai Chi are part, even though I don't teach those, but they're part of Chinese. So movement. I do teach a yin yoga, so I often teach people stretches and movement. That's also a part of the medicine.
Renee, I could spend all day chatting with you and getting into the ways that you help and heal people. Before I let you go, where can we find you so that for people who are ready to take this journey into their wellness, so they can know where to find you?
You can find, Renee Pilgrim. I am pretty much anywhere if you Google Renee Pilgrim Acupuncture, but I'm at Transformaven Renee on Instagram, which I'm not super consistent at, but I'm definitely there, and GNP Health and Wellness on Facebook. That is my professional page. I'm also Renee Pilgrim. I work at Manning Chiropractic, and I work at 120 La Marchant out of Resonance Healing.
Thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back, everyone.
Your opinion matters, and we want to hear from you. Get in touch with us using our viewer feedback line, your direct connection to shaping the shows you love. It's easy. Just grab your phone, scan the QR code on your screen, and take our quick survey. Share your thoughts, and let's make your viewing experience even better.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I am now joined by Hannah Sparks, who is the owner of Spark Your Growth Counseling. Hannah, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
So it's Mental Health Month, because it's May. Well, it's a lot of other months too, but we're going to focus on mental health. I would love the viewers to get a chance to get to know a little bit about you. So how did you get into counseling? I guess to start.
Yeah, so I graduated from social work at MUN in 2016, and I immediately went into a counseling job. Typically, that's not the way it works. You would normally have a master's before you went into this line of clinical work, but I went into a hard-to-recruit position in the Nunavut region of the province, and I started working as a mental health and addictions counselor then, and I've been doing it ever since.
Okay, that's like straight out the gate is where you went. Did you always want to work in counseling? Was that for you?
I did, yeah. I was interested in the mental health and addiction side of things. At first, actually, when I got into social work, I didn't realize that we had the capacity to be counselors, but it was something that I was interested in. I had toyed around with the idea of psychology at first, but ultimately decided on social work, and it just ended up working out.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
So I got to find you through Instagram. And for a lot of people, that is usually the first place they turn to when it comes to thinking and talking about mental health.
Yeah.
So when you started your Instagram, what was it for you and how did it come to be?
So I started my Instagram page in 2020. So it was just as the pandemic hit, everybody got sent home. I was working at a nonprofit at the time. So I didn't have a commute anymore. I had all this time on my hands. For the work that I was doing at the time, I was learning a lot about trauma and mental health, things that I was also practicing in my work every day. And I just wanted to make that more accessible to the general public. So Spark Your Growth actually started as a blog. I was writing weekly, sometimes more than once a week. I was writing blogs about just different information around psychoeducation to share with people to just help lessen the stigma around mental health, hoping that people would maybe lean in and get more in tune with their emotions, and yeah, just kind of work on themselves and see how I could help people out.
Well, it's grown since then, and you have amazing content and a wicked amount of followers too.
Thank you.
So I want to touch a little bit about your work in the counseling sector. So you work a lot in the trauma sector.
Yeah.
So trauma is a word that we see floating around. A lot of people saying, oh, I have trauma, but not a lot of people truly understand what it means to be diagnosed with trauma. So can you talk to me about that a little bit?
Right. So trauma is a very complex topic. It's a complex concept. So just to kind of simplify it, what trauma means is anything that we've experienced in the past that continues to insert itself into our lives today. And typically we think about this in a negative connotation. So it can show up and it can impact us and our holistic health, our mental health, our psychological well-being, our physical health, our social life, our spiritual health. And it's almost as if the event that has been long gone continues to show up and just have influence over our life in the current moment.
Okay. So for a lot of people who are watching, who are sometimes maybe sitting here listening, be like, oh, that's me. There's something that happened maybe years upon years ago, or even as early as last week, and it is still feels like it is moving through life with me.
Right.
What would be, let's say, a first step? Because maybe reaching out to a counselor is still a little too far and too scary for them. What would you say for someone who's like, hi, that's me? Yeah,
so I think when it comes to any kind of challenge with our mental health, we can't really separate our mental health from other facets of our health. So working on our basic needs, attending to our sleep as best as we can, fueling our bodies through nutrition, hydrating our bodies, also moving. Physical activity is huge when it comes to helping us to kind of process our emotions. Mindfulness practice is something that has been talked about a whole lot since the pandemic, especially on social media. So learning how to be present in the moment, to ground ourselves. There's lots of different resources online. Bridge the Gap is a website that Eastern Health has put out. So there's lots of different resources in terms of mindfulness on there. Instagram has lots of different resources, and we just want to make sure that we're getting our resources from sources that are legitimate, so that and also recognizing too, it's like the things that are put out online are very generalized, so what might work really great for you might not work for me, and vice versa. But just taking time to kind of explore what's going to work for you as an individual, and also social connection is really important, so connecting with safe people in our lives.
Okay, so May being Mental Health Month, a lot of people, when the pandemic hit, started realizing that mental health is a thing.
Yeah.
And that's very separate from mental illness,
right,
and still trying to navigate the language for both. So what would you like to let people know when it comes to our overall mental health and the distinguishing difference between mental health and mental illness, and how the two are sometimes related or unrelated?
Right. So we all have mental health. It is a part of being a human being. We don't necessarily all meet the criteria of mental illness. So a mental illness is something that would be diagnosed by a physician, and it meets certain, we need to meet certain criteria in order to be able to be diagnosed with a mental illness. That doesn't mean, though, if you don't have a mental illness, that you can't struggle with your mental health. So we can still experience uncomfortable emotions. We can still have uncomfortable emotions that show up and then can impact our lives. So I think whether we have a mental health issue at the moment or whether we have a mental illness, it's so important for us to be kind to ourselves, to lean in and to recognize that it's okay to have uncomfortable emotions at times. It doesn't mean that there is anything exceptionally wrong with us. It's natural to feel sadness at times. It's natural to feel fearful at times. All the whole range of mental health emotions, right? And so, at the end of the day, when we can learn to validate our feelings, then it helps us to kind of see what level of care we might need at the time.
Okay, well, thank you so much, because I think for a lot of us, when we started ongoing, the pandemic was a shock to a lot of people's systems.
Yeah.
So immediately jumped, I'm not okay, something has to clinically be wrong with me. So it's nice to let people know that it's okay to not be okay. And then if there's a prolonged period of not okayness, then we check in with our clinical professionals.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it's okay to be preventative and stuff as well, right? So we can access therapeutic services even before we have anything that feels severe. Okay. And I think that because mental health has been stigmatized, we are more reactive versus preventative. But when we can lean into caring for our holistic health, then it helps us not to have to be so reactive at times when things get tough.
Okay, so we're going to touch on that preventative. So what does preventative care for our mental health look like?
Right. So again, we can't really separate our mental health and our physical health. We need to work on our holistic health. So that would be doing things that are good for our mind, which are also going to be things that are good for our body, like taking care of those basic needs, like engaging with people who are safe supports for us, like finding community. It could be making sure that maybe we're leaning into a meditation practice. We're learning about mindfulness. We're getting outdoors. That's a huge one, spending time in nature. Doing the things that we need to do to take care of our holistic health is going to be also good for our mental health.
Okay. That makes it a lot easier to kind of understand and conceptualize how we care for ourselves holistically. So I got you for about 1 more minute.
Okay.
If there was one thing you would want our viewers to know about Mental Health Month, or about how to support themselves as a whole, what would it be?
The thing that I think that I try to stress the most to people is that it is okay to feel uncomfortable. When we can lean into discomfort, when we can remember that it is natural to feel uncomfortable emotions, that's what's going to help us to reach out for help, to talk to a friend about what we have going on, to reach out for therapeutic services, to let ourselves be authentic and with what we have going on in the moment. So that's definitely what I would like to tell everybody.
Hannah, it's been a joy to spend time with you. I know your Instagram is now a must follow for me, so I hope our viewers check into that too. But thank you so much for taking time out of your day.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back, everyone. I want to give a very special thank you to my guests for joining me today. Thank you to Renee for sharing about her Chinese medicine practice and about how acupuncture can help people, and even if it might not be for you. Another very special thank you to Hannah Sparks for talking us through what trauma can be like for individuals, what we can do when we begin to notice something off within ourselves, and what overall mental health care can look like. For all of you watching, remember mental health is more than just mental illness. It's all about mental wellness for you as well. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I can't wait to see you all again next time.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
We want to hear from you. Provide feedback on this show or find out how you can get involved. Call, email us, or scan the QR code to take our quick survey.
Engine 51, Ambo 61, structure fire.
Wednesdays on City TV. Watch 3 back-to-back episodes of the hit franchise with Chicago Med.
I witnessed plenty of last-second miracles.
Fire.